Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I haven't published anything on YouTube for a few days because I haven't been feeling the best, so you may detect that my voice is a little bit off, so I just wanted to address that from the outset. Nothing serious, though. I'm feeling much better than a couple days ago. But if you think I sound a little bit different, then you're definitely not crazy. Also, if you think that the bull market is over and that the best is in for XRP, I gotta let you know. You're wrong. You are absolutely wrong if you think things are over for the crypto market and over for XRP. And I tell you, I've noticed quite the shift in sentiment over the last several days. Have you guys as well? I bet you guys on social media, you got a good feel on the pulse of the world of crypto. It's changed over several days. That's all it took. Little liquidation event, this and that. And now everybody's opinion about what's likely to occur has shifted, but it doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to explain why. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so let's cut to it, because there has been a substantial increase in the number of analysts, the number of crypto media outlets and social media users calling for a bear market over the past several days. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, being bearish is currently trendy. It very much is. You know, when it's not trendy, you can tell because the bears they'll poke their heads out and then they'll just get bitch smacked verbally on social media. Not so much here. It's very popular to be bearish right now. And you know, if these people are correct, then we have just lived through the most disappointing bull run in crypto history. Think about it. Look, Bitcoin did less than a twofold increase compared to its previous all-time high from last cycle several years ago. XRP and Ethereum barely hit levels above their previous all-time highs. There was no face-melting price discovery for either of them. That's never happened before. Well, I mean, for XRP, it's different just because obviously the SEC attacked, but from a historical context, you wouldn't expect that to occur, obviously. And, you know, we also never had a euphoric alt season. Where'd that go? And look, on top of that, so many things that we have come to rely on to tell us when the top of crypto markets occur are no longer reliable if the bears are correct. For example, Bitcoin market dominance. That son of a bitch never broke down. Never did. It went down a little bit. It didn't have a full-on breakdown. That's not normal, okay? That's definitely not normal. That would be a first in history. Also, 30 out of 30 crypto market cycle top indicators tracked by CoinMarketCap did not flash warning signs, which would also be a first in history. I mean, let me show you the website for those of you looking at the screen. And I've highlighted this before, and I'll highlight it from time to time. Here it is. Crypto market cycle top indicators. They list 30 of them. Here to the right, you can see X's because literally none of them have been triggered. So all of them are now garbage, even though they were reliable for every single other market cycle, but they just suddenly don't work. Because of reasons, folks. You sure about that? You sure about that? And then social media sentiment. Let's talk a little bit about that. Social media sentiment did not peak in irrational bullishness. That would also be a first in history. So you see, this is a whole lot of this time is different if this is your state of mind, right? You know, Bitcoin, and then there's more though. Bitcoin and the broader crypto asset class deviated from global M2, which is around an all-time high. Literally right now, it's an all-time high territory right now. And it's happening at a moment in history where it followed every other time at this point in market cycle. So that would also be a first. That's kind of a big one because, frankly, Global M2 is the best individual indicator, in my opinion anyway, as to directionally where you should expect this to go. And it's not the end-all, be-all. I'm not pretending that. But if you had to pick one, like for me, that would be the one. And then there's the business cycle. You know, crypto has always peaked at the top of the business cycle. So if we've really peaked, that's another first as well because we're not at the top of the business cycle. And look, I could go on, but you get the point, right? So, yes, it has become trendy to be bearish now, but, you know, frankly, I find that the chart analysts that I choose to follow don't just go with whatever way the wind is blowing. That's why I follow them. It's based on track record. In fact, only one chart analyst that I follow is now convinced that it's highly likely we're entering a bear market rather than a continuation of the bull market. Only one. And of course, if you want your XRP to go on a final face-melting rally, this is probably the topic that matters most to you right now. It's what matters most to me. It's what everybody's talking about for good reason. I understand why. Look at what just happened on Friday, the liquidation of it. Pure insanity. I get it. So, I'm going to break down a few things that have happened in recent days and provide reasons to be optimistic. And not because I want the bull market to continue, though of course I do, but because, in my humble opinion, a bull market continuation is the most probable outcome. Now, that being said, there are a few analysts that I follow, including in the TradFi world, who believe there is a very reasonable chance that we do see a notable pullback, which of course would hit stocks and crypto, and that could be happening potentially sooner than later. But I will just note that none of those folks that I follow, none of them believe it would mark the end of the bull market. And pullbacks in bull markets, just to be clear, they're very commonplace. So I do not think it makes sense to say this time is different. And it also doesn't make sense to only look at what's happening in the charts and draw broad conclusions without factoring in. I mean, if you're talking about what's happening, to look at only charts and not factor in what's like the macro environment and everything else and a lot of the other stuff I just cited, and without acknowledging that history rhymes with itself. So when you're in similarly situated situations, more likely than not, you put people in a similar situation one time, do it again and again and again, they're probably going to react about the same every single time. That's why history rhymes with itself. Humans keep having the same DNA that causes them to have the same types of human behaviors in similar situations. So to bet against that isn't typically wise. Also, and I want to point this out before getting into some of the specifics and kind of what has led to some of this in recent days. I want to highlight this. If you're not looking at your screen and you're in a moment where it's safe, like if you're not driving, for example, you should. This is worth looking at here. History of U.S. bear and bull markets. And this is going back to 1942. And the data here ends in 2024, so it gets even better because you know that this year has, on the whole, been good despite notable pullbacks, of course. But look at this. And this is why I'm just highlighting history rhymes with itself. Let me just read this. This time is not different, though. I do not believe so. This chart shows daily historical performance of the S&P 500 index throughout the U.S. bull and bear markets since 1942. We believe looking at the history of the market's expansions and recessions helps to gain a fresh perspective on the benefits of investing for the long term. The average bull market period lasted 4.3 years, with an average cumulative total return of 149.5%. The average bear market period lasted 11.1 months, with an average cumulative loss of 31.7%. So the highs are much higher compared to the lows, compared to how low the lows are. But you're trending to the upside, folks, and that shouldn't exactly be surprising here. But also, the periods of time in which you're in a bull market, way more substantial. I mean, look at this. It changes it when you can visualize it, right? All these blue periods, these are bull markets. The yellow ones, bear markets. We are almost always in a bull market going back to 1942. And by the way, I found a separate piece of data, which I'll just cite, and it was going back to 1928. And if you go back to 1928, 78% of the time we've been in a bull market, 22% of the time, almost 100 years, mind you, only 22% of the time since 1928 have we been in a bear market. So think about what that means. And this explains why hodling works. Keep in mind, crypto follows what happens with the stock market, all right? And I think that the S&P 500 is a pretty good benchmark of what's happening in the stock market, just broadly speaking. It's a good sample size, right? 500 companies? Sure. So knowing that crypto follows directionally what happens in the stock market, and then understanding that we're just going to keep trending to the upside, do you see why it doesn't make sense to freak out about what's going to happen with XRP? If you have a sufficiently long mindset, this is why it doesn't matter. Because even if the bears are right this time, and I really doubt it, but they could be, even if the bears are right, then I'm going to wait a few years, and then the market's going to come back, and it's going to rally, and then I'm going to sell at an even higher price than I otherwise would have. So there you go. That's what I'll do. You guys do whatever you want. I'm not going to sell into the panic. That doesn't make any sense. I'll just keep earning new money and buying more stuff. Whole bunch of crypto and stuff. Because that's what makes logical sense here. That's why I wanted to highlight this. You should not be afraid here. It just doesn't make any sense. HODL life actually works. Just look at this. You hold and you hold and you hold, and then you win. And that you just do whatever it takes. Because you don't choose when the market rallies. You don't choose when it declines, which is why I say you just got to make peace with that. You got to be an adult, and you have to make peace with that. And then control the parts that you can control, which isn't much. But you control whether you buy, sell, or hold, right? So do that. Do what you think is best for you. For me, the answer is after I buy stuff, I do nothing. Whatever that means, through the depths of the worst bear markets imaginable, through the SEC attacking the XRP community. I held all of my XRP. I've never sold a single XRP in my entire life. I'm just gonna bear it. That's it, because that's the part that I can control. It does not make sense to be panicking here, even if the bears are right. But again, if you just look at historically what happens, the bears are almost certainly wrong here. Even if we do have a pullback in the short term, okay, pullbacks happen in bull markets. It's actually over here. I do not find that to be compelling. In fact, the sentiment shift is because it's bearish now. The sentiment shift is exactly what you would expect after a capitulation event like happened on Friday. Of course they did, because they're limbing retail speculators. That's it. And then there's you understand, the vast majority of chart analysts you're going to come across on social media, they do not have good track records. That's almost all of them. You know that, right? Almost all of them have trash analysis. That's the truth of it. You got to be selective who you listen to. And that's why out of the analysts that I listen to, I find they actually have pretty damn good track records. Nobody's perfect. They're all going to get things wrong, sometimes even important calls. But if you consider each chart analyst that I follow as an individual data point, usually what most of them think is going to happen is what ends up happening. And if I see a shift and they're like, actually, we're all shifting bearish, I'm going to highlight that on my channel. I'm just telling you what I'm honestly seeing, and I'm not seeing reasons to be panicked here. It just doesn't make sense to me. History rhymes with itself. I do not think this time is likely to be different. And if it is, then the market's going to recover, folks. It's not like XRP is going to cease to matter in the world. It's not like crypto is going to cease to matter in the world. It's not like, the United States economy is never going to be viewed favorably enough that it can have a positive stock market. That's never going to happen. Not in my lifetime. I think it makes sense to be optimistic here. And so I'm sure that everybody by now has heard what caused the Friday meltdown. And even if the market was primed to have some sort of pullback, the tariff scare, that really got it going here. And so this was the actual trigger, even though I do buy into the arguments I think they're plausible that, hey, we were looking for at least to some degree a liquidation event, something small. Yeah, perfectly reasonable argument. Nobody saw this coming, though. To this degree, this black swan event, nobody knew that this was going to happen, right? So the Kabasi letter, just 2 days ago, on Sunday, after everything had happened, and Trump was threatening 100% tariff, this and that, we got this news. This was on Sunday. Kabasi letter covers this on X. Investors are waking up to some major news from China. The entire tariff crash on October 10th may have just been one big misunderstanding between Trump and Xi. So that's the president of China, of course. The news about China's rare earth export controls came out on October 9th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 26 hours before Trump posted about it. This was a non-news event until President Trump posted about it over 1 day later. Last night, China released a statement clarifying their export controls on rare earths. In their response, China said the new controls are not a full export ban, and applications that meet regulations will be approved. And so there you go. The whole scare about this looks like it was nothing, right? And then they write, amid the market's downturn on Friday, our view was that the 100% tariff announcement by Trump was a bargaining chip. After China's statement last night, we believe the odds of Trump's 100% tariff on China going into effect are extremely low. And folks, I'll just pause and note, I said the same thing in April when we were talking about And by the way, April called it would like its stupid tariff narrative back. Can we just give that back to April? Like, it's crazy that we're still talking about this, but it still spooked the market. It just did. Trump's just like, you haven't learned. He just says stuff that sounds flagrant as a bargaining chip. You haven't learned that's a tactic that he uses for negotiations, and market's going to respond like this. My God, it's just so stupid. Anyway, then they say the largest crypto liquidation in history and a $2.5 trillion loss of S&P 500 market cap appears to have been driven by one big misunderstanding. We expect another trade deal soon. Fair enough. And so, of course, on Monday, the market went up. Then again on Tuesday, the market went up. But do you know what happened this afternoon? Like, here's the Russell 2000, and this is, I gotta admit, it's hilarious to me because it's just hilarious to me when my net worth goes down substantially. So here we go. Hold that. This is just the one-day chart, but it went up yesterday, went up today. We hit it on the Russell 2000, small caps, right? Small cap index, something that must break out with serious force in order to see an alt season. We've never had an alt season without the Russell 2000 doing this. The Russell 2000 today, this afternoon, hit a new all-time high. It was an intraday high, but it did hit a new all-time high, and it didn't close above that. Look, it just fell off a cliff. Do you see this? See how it just fell off a cliff right there? Well, that's weird. Did something cause that? Yes, the answer is yes. It was the President of the United States posting things on the social media. And so here's a copy of a post from President Trump that he shared on his platform, Truth Social. And he just wrote this afternoon. It was actually, I believe it was 2:37. I want to say 2:37 p.m. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. I might have more data on that, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so here's what President Trump wrote this afternoon. And this is what caused the Russell 2000 to go down. The S&P 500 went down. We could have had potentially a new close, another new all-time high for the Russell 2000, and then we just didn't get it because of what's on your screen. So here's what he wrote. And he's just pushing. This is more negotiation stuff, obviously. It's very clear this is a negotiation tactic. He speaks toughly, and then he meets in the middle. That's what he does. How have people not learned this? It's just amazing to me. But anyway, so he wrote, I believe that China purposefully not buying our soybeans and causing difficulty for our soybean farmers is an economically hostile act. We are considering terminating business with China having to do with cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution. As an example, we can easily produce cooking oil ourselves. We don't need to purchase it from China. And I gotta tell you, this is the moment in time where I really wish I could do a convincing President Trump impersonation. Sadly, I cannot. This would have been the time to use it. But here, the Kobasi letter that they shared. They shared this data. Look at this. Look at this chart, man. This is the S&P 500 when the news hit. Yeah, it was 2:37 p.m. Central Time. The stock market just. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. The stock market just erased $450 billion in 7 minutes because President Trump threatened to start producing cooking oil in the U.S. Now that's hilarious just to hear. That's just a funny thing to hear. I'm having a good time with that, are you? Even though my net worth went down substantially because of it. I got the lulls. Well, because I'm laughing because I know it doesn't actually matter, because I'm just going to hold, and then it's going to be worth way more in the future, so it doesn't matter. Let the people that want to panic sell make their stupid-ass decisions. I'm going to continue to do precisely nothing, because doing nothing works over very long periods of time, and I will be more stubborn, more patient than anyone else on the planet, period. That has been the way that I've invested ever since I jumped into crypto in 2017. It's the same way that I've invested in the stock market prior to that. It's just hodl. That's it. You just hold for however long it takes. That is that. Here's a post from Ryan Dietrich. He's the chief market strategist at Carson Group. And you got to see this data on the screen. It says, the fourth year of the bull market starts right now. Only once did year 4 see a bear market and an end to the bull market, and that happened in 1966. You can see where there is this X here. He's saying, out of these roughly 4 years, like, only once did you get to year 4 and you actually got a bear. Only one time, going back to 1950. Going back to 1950, folks. He says the past year 4 saw stocks up double digits and higher 6 out of 7 times. So if you're betting that we're we're just not going to go. This is the S&P 500, but again, crypto tends to correlate. And yes, of course, I recognize you can have a massive rampage to the upside, and you can have a temporary detachment in terms of correlation. Got it. I understand that. Do you really think this is the moment where it happens, given that we haven't had all of the historic things happen that mark tops for crypto? Don't you think that's a little peculiar? I mean, I do. Why aren't the cycle top indicators warning us that the top's in? Doesn't make any sense here. And so that's why I keep saying, like, I don't pretend to know what's going to happen. That's never my shtick. I don't pretend to know. I admit I don't know. But what I am saying is, if I vote 100% of the time that we're just going to be in a bull market, I'm going to almost always be right. I mean, it goes back to what I was showing you earlier in the video, where you can see how long bull markets and bear markets last. If I were to bet 100% of the time, so I'm a perma bull, I'm going to almost always be right. If you are a perma bear and 100% of the time you bet we're going to be in a bear market, you are almost always wrong. Now, I'm not arguing you should always be a bull or a bear. I'm just trying to show you that it most of the time it doesn't make sense to be feeling scared and bearish. It just doesn't. You're going to see every single year, whether we're in a bull or bear market, there are going to be people, instilling fear in you, attempting to do that. Like, it's going to happen. There's going to be the people that speak like that. And look, when we get to the point where it does make sense to be fearful that we're getting close to the top, I'll talk about it. Hell yeah, I'm going to talk about it. I've been through, this is my third crypto market cycle. I was talking about before. It's not like I'm going to stop doing that. I'm just telling you, it doesn't make sense to believe that we're in that yet. That's my opinion anyway. But yes, of course, when we get to the point where we're seeing cycle top indicators and it looks like things are getting a little heavy there, yes, of course, I'll talk about it. I'm not a perma bull. I'm just saying right now, it doesn't make sense to believe that this thing's over. You're really betting against the odds. If you think this is over, fine. You could be right. I think you're really betting against the odds. And I think that you should really look at more than one thing. You should look at historic precedent, and not just one thing. Like, certainly not just charts. Here's a post from Raoul Pal. Very popular man in the crypto space, 1.2 million followers. He's the reason that I understand the significance of global M2 and how Bitcoin and the crypto asset class follow it. It's the best individual metric out there for determining what's most probable to occur. And there's a 3-month lag time roughly for Bitcoin following global M2 because it takes a while for people, businesses, institutions, once they have additional liquidity, to decide where to put it. And some of that liquidity ends up in stocks, some ends up in crypto, and so it's easy to understand why that happens. The more liquidity is out there, the more likely you are to have a risk-on attitude, right? And crypto and stocks are risk-on assets, right? And so here's what Raoul Pal said a couple days ago. He said, all said and done, regardless of what sparked it, Friday was a flash crash. Flash crashes usually recover in V-shapes back to their prior price/range and usually go on to make new highs shortly after. In this case, we entirely wiped out all accumulated leverage to higher. Folks, that's just data. Do you think this time is different? Look, you could be right. Sometimes the improbable happens. I always acknowledge that. But if you always vote with the improbable, you're going to be wrong most of the time. So why would you do that? It doesn't make sense. Here's a post from Nijin Tropic. These guys, the guys that are running this account, they're the founders of Swissblock and Glassnode, both fantastic on-chain analytics firms. And they wrote, what comes next will melt faces. The most hated rally of this cycle begins tomorrow. Leverage will take time to rebuild, but momentum is about to accelerate. The opportunity cost of not being allocated here is massive. Remember, 3% of days account for 95% of returns. Miss them, and you miss the cycle. And folks, that is literally true. The biggest, most important moves in crypto happen on a very small percentage of time. And either you have exposure when those days happen, or you do not. And so the only way that I know of to make sure that I do is to just hold for every single day. Then you know you're going to hit it. Not rocket science here, folks. And we know the asset class is getting bigger. We know it's trending up. It does not make sense to be fearful here. And I still think you're wrong if you think it's over right now. I just do. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. And I could be wrong. I doubt it, but could be. It just makes so much sense to be bullish here. And this is why I keep saying, there's a reason I'm making this specific video, and I'll be happy to make something that's way more XRP heavy next time. But you got to understand all of this first. This is why I firmly believe that this sets everything up for XRP to absolutely rocket. I just think it's insane to believe that what's most probable here is that XRP consolidated for the better part of a decade, only to barely get above the previous all-time high from 2018, and then it's just like, okay, I'm done here. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so, folks. And also in the broader macro context, it also doesn't make sense. I think it's going to go way, way, way higher. And in the event I'm wrong, which again, I admit it, possible, ultimately it won't matter to me because I will continue to hold. Even if it takes another 4 or 5 years, and then the market routes, I'm still going to do it. It's going to be fine, folks. Do not be fearful here. It just doesn't make sense to be fearful. Logically, it doesn't make sense to be fearful. You got XRP after that liquidation event at $2.49. I think we're fine. Excuse me. I'm going to wrap up here, though, because I can feel like I'm about to have a coughing fit. I need to stop talking. But thanks for hanging out with me. I always appreciate the support. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.